This is the end of the book of Numbers. We have a double Parsha. We are in Parshas Mattos and Masei. But at the very end of the book, the very end of the wonderful book of Bamidbar, we read a follow-up to a story that we already addressed. And the book ends off maybe on a bit of an unexpected note. We revisit the dilemma of the daughters of Tzelafchad. We read about this Parshas Pinchas, you recall. A man dies in the wilderness. His name is Tzelafchad, and he has no male descendants. He has 5 children, and they're all females. And the question is raised, what to do with his ancestral lands that he will be entitled to, that he will be apportioned in the Holy Land. Every Israelite who left Egypt was entitled to some slice of territory in the land of Canaan that the nation is about to acquire. Now, if they died, these ancestral lands continue and remain in their family, but it goes to their sons. Well, what if someone doesn't have any sons? All they have is daughters. That was the question that was raised by the daughters of a man named Tzelafchad from the tribe of Menashe. 5 daughters posed this question to Moshe. They argued that, well, if a man has sons, great. It stays in the family with the family name, with the family tribe. Fantastic. But what if he has no sons, just daughters? What then? So Moshe filed their request with God, and indeed it was confirmed. In this event, where there are no sons, the daughters inherit the father's ancestral land. That was in chapter 27 of the book of Numbers. We read it last week. And now, their story is not finished, apparently. The end of the book, the very last chapter of the book, it's the epilogue, part 2 of the drama of the daughters of Tzelafchad, of these 5 sisters. Moshe apparently settled the matter. They inherit the lands, but now some of the other interests in this family, in this tribe, they have a problem with it. And they come to Moshe and they say, listen, it's a great idea to give these lands, part of the tribe of Menashe, to give it to these daughters, but what if they marry men from other tribes? If they marry men from the tribe of Dan, or of Judah, Benjamin, not from the tribe of Menashe, well, then at the initial division of the land, we're not going to have all of the lands of Menashe being in the family of Menashe, because those lands will be acquired by the descendants of these women. And as a result, we're going to have an outpost of other tribes amidst the lands of the tribe of Menashe. Now, if these women marry intra-tribally, they only marry from the tribe of Menashe, we have no problem. But of course, a woman is allowed to marry whoever she wants. And if they choose to marry someone outside of the tribe of Menashe, we're not going to initially acquire the land, all of the lands of Menashe. It will go to some other tribe, potentially. That was the dilemma that the elders of the tribe of Menashe brought to Moshe. And Moshe again takes this into consideration and instructs the people that the will of God is that indeed these women can marry whomever they want, but they have to be from the tribe of Menashe. Because when the initial division of the land happens, and each tribe is apportioned their section of the Holy Land, they must initially acquire the entirety of their tribal lands. And therefore, because these women, they could marry out of the tribe, and then the initial division of the land will not be done, meaning that every tribal land will not be entirely acquired by that tribe, members of that tribe. Therefore, they can marry whoever they want, so long as they are from the tribe of Menashe. That's how Moshe addresses the question of the elders of this tribe. And indeed, that's what happens. chapter 36, verse 11, 3611, great numbers. These 5 daughters of Tzelafchad, these 5 sisters, Machla, Tirzah, Chagla, Milcah, and Noah, they married their cousins from the same tribe. They married their paternal cousins, and these lands, they stayed in the tribe. All is well, and the book ends with this final law being addressed, or this final epilogue to the story being delineated. These are the mitzvos and the statutes that God instructed Moshe to tell the Jewish people in the plains of Moab, opposite the city of Jericho. That is how the book ends. If you think about it, it's kind of strange. We finish up the book by revisiting this story of these 5 sisters, the 5 daughters of Tzelafchad. That's the punchline. That's the crescendo. That's the climax of the book. We have the story that we might have forgotten about. It's chapter 27. It's some time ago, and it's apparently settled, but not quite. We now have the final element of the story. Yes, they get the lands, provided that they marry amongst their own tribe, so that the initial division of the land is done according to the tribes. Doesn't it make more sense to simply wrap up the story of these 5 sisters in Parshas Pinchas when the whole saga of the daughters of Tzelafchad is initially told? Why do we have to revisit it now? This narrative was deliberately split up so that our parting thoughts from this book, the Book of Bamidbar, are with these sisters and the terms, so to speak, of the agreement that they acquire the land of their father. And this is the most fitting exclamation of this book. And the question is why? Why are we not told this story in its totality then? Why are we given the end point of this story now as our goodbye to this book? So perhaps we can speculate an idea. There's a very sharp and interesting observation in Rashi's comment to the aforementioned chapter 36, verse 11. If you look at the verse, it talks about how these 5 sisters, these 5 daughters of Tzelafchad, they got married to their cousins, and it lists the 5 women. And it organizes them in a different manner than it does initially. In chapter 36, verse 11, we read how it was Machla, Tirzah, Chagla, Milcah, and Noah. 5 wonderful names, of course. Rashi points out that in the first part of the story, the first installment of the saga of these 5 sisters, the order of the delineation of these 5 women was different. It tells us Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milcah, Tirzah. Why does it switch the order? Why does it alter the order? Now, most of us, we have long forgotten about that story. We forgot about it a long time ago, and certainly we don't remember the order of the delineation of these women. And even if we did remember, we wouldn't accord it so much significance. It's not such a important detail, we would imagine. But of course, nothing escapes the scrutiny of Rashi, and he asks the question, why is the order of these sisters changed from chapter 27 to now, the end of the book, chapter 36? And he gives a very interesting answer. He says, well, there are different ways to make a list. If you have a list of 5 people, you could organize it in a variety of ways. You could do it by order of age, by order of intelligence, IQ, accomplishments, height, BMI, income. Lots of different ways that you can organize a list of 5 people. Says Rashi, every time these women are delineated It's always done by order of wisdom, with the exception of the present verse. Here, it's organized by age. And the reason why the order is altered, it's to tell you that all of these 5 remarkable women were equal. That's what Rashi tells us. Now, it's an interesting Rashi. It's also a bit perplexing, because there doesn't seem to be a very consistent logical flow. Every other time, they're organized based upon wisdom. So, chapter 27, verse 1, it lists the 5 women in order of wisdom. Here's the exception. Here it's organizing them by age. Okay, if that's where Rashi stopped, I'd say, okay, fine. The age is important. Wisdom is important. Sometimes it will organize them by wisdom. Sometimes in order of age. I get it. But then Rashi tells us that teaches us that they were all equal. There's 5 women. One is the wisest, and one is relatively the least wise. And that's why they're organized in that order. But this is to tell you that they're equal. What's the logical flow here? If they're typically enumerated in order of wisdom, and here they're enumerated in order of age, how does that in any way lend itself to the statement that they are all equal? That's kind of a strange Rashi. So there's a little bit of a calculation here done in the commentaries on Rashi. The Maharal says, Rashi understands that if not for the fact that they were equal, the Torah would not alter the preferred sequencing. And therefore, sometimes it tells us the order by wisdom, and sometimes by order of age. But the truth is, we could have organized this list in many different ways, because they were all equal. Each was great in their own way. And again, the words of the Maharal here explaining Rashi. Each one of these 5 sisters, was greater than the rest of her peers in some way. One of them was the wisest. One of them was the oldest. And one of them was greater in this fashion, or in that dimension, or in that way. Each had some point of greatness that she excelled in, and therefore they were equal. Each was great in her own way. That's how the Maharal explains this Rashi. I think there's a very deep and maybe a bit surprising point over here. In our religion, there has always been a great emphasis placed upon wisdom. The centrality of knowledge, of learning, of thinking has always been unchallenged amongst our people. Our culture has always been one of study. We've always been the people of the book. Our pastime, our obsession has always been education, studying. That has always been a top priority, perhaps the top priority amongst our people. We've had mandatory schooling and near universal literacy for thousands of years. 2,000 years ago, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel established a system of formalized schooling. You are not allowed, according to Jewish law, to live in a city that does not have robust educational offerings. That was true historically. It's today still true. Jews are universally obsessed with education. And the only difference between now and the historical reality is that historically the quest for knowledge, for learning, for education was almost exclusively Torah learning. And today, sadly, many Jews ignore Torah study. Maybe they accord it some pro forma, perfunctory attention, and they focus their educational efforts elsewhere. But the primacy of education, the value of education, it's still ubiquitous amongst our people, as it always has been. The daughters of Tzelafchad are enumerated several times in the Torah. And the order is almost always in order of wisdom. Machla, Noah, Chardla, Milcah, and Tirza. When we organize things, when we organize our society, our communities, we give priority to wisdom above all. That is the organizing principle of our religion, of our people. But once the Torah alters the order to tell us that the degree of wisdom is not synonymous with a person's standing in the eyes of God, in the eyes of Torah. A person standing in the eyes of God is not the same thing as their degree of wisdom. What actually determines a person's standing in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the ultimate true reality, is how completely did they actualize their potential. So someone who was endowed with great potential for wisdom, they will be judged, well, how much of what they could have become did they become? How much of their potential did they actualize? Others are endowed with other potential. Did someone who had great potential for kindness, for charity, for hospitality, did they actualize that? Someone else that was endowed with great potential for empathy, for caring for others, did they actualize that? Someone who had great potential for character perfection, for ethical refinement, for self-criticism, did they become a most resplendently refined person? What about someone who's jovial, who's jocular, and they could cheer people up? They could infuse the downtrodden with hope, with positivity. Did they actualize that? What about someone who is a great builder, can build communities? Did they actualize that? Did the person with great potential for serving God with all their hearts and with all their soul, did they actualize that? Everyone's different. Everyone is expected to develop themselves in a unique way. And the measure of a person's greatness is completely dependent on how completely they actualize their potential. And the daughters of Tzelafchad are equal. And yes, Machla was the wisest. And most of the time she goes first. And that's the way our communities must be organized, because that is the governing principle of our people. But don't make the mistake, Rashi tells us, the Torah tells us, of thinking that she was the greatest. Greatness is measured by the degree to which someone actualized their potential. And on that barometer, all of these 5 sisters were equal. One was greater in this dimension. One was greater in that dimension. Each one had one area of their persona that was their particular greatness, their particular calling, their particular manifestation of their potential. And all of them unlocked their potential to the same degree. Now, reading this comment in Rashi, it reminded me of a similar comment in the beginning of the book of Exodus. You recall the book of Exodus. We're closer to next year's book of Exodus than we are to this past one. When Moshe and Aaron, siblings, when they're introduced and they're attributed to their Levite origins. Chapter 6, verse 26, we read, Hu Aharonu Moshe. They are Aaron and Moshe. And Rashi observes yet again that sometimes it says Moshe then Aaron, and sometimes it says Aaron then Moshe. Why does it change the order? Why does it alter the sequencing? Says Rashi, there are places that Aaron comes before Moshe, and there are places where Moshe comes before Aaron. Why would the Torah do that? This teaches us that Moshe and Aaron are equal. In the eyes of the Torah, who goes first? Well, Moshe goes sometimes, Aaron goes sometimes, because they're equal in the eyes of the Almighty. Now, that, of course, is very perplexing. What? How can you possibly claim that Moshe and Aaron are equal? Moshe is the humblest man who's ever lived. He's the greatest prophet who's ever lived. He's the greatest leader. He's the one who gave us the Torah. He's the one who ascended to heaven and negotiated and overcame and triumphed over the angels. He was Aaron's superior. How can you claim that they were equal, that they were peers? Now we know the answer. There is no universal metric of a person's greatness. Everyone is measured according to their own unique inborn abilities and opportunities. Moshe and Aaron were different. Each had a different role to play, and each performed, executed on their respective mission to perfection. And again, the way our people are organized, wisdom, it's the number one priority. And therefore, most of the time, Moshe is going to go first. But sometimes the order is reversed to tell us, to remind us that Moshe and Aaron were equal. Each was great in his respective way. Moshe, he was the wisest one. He was the greatest king of all. He was the only giver of Torah. He was the greatest prophet of all. Aaron, well, he's the greatest priest, the high priest of all. He's the peacemaker of great distinction. Each actualized all of their potential. And they're different. But because they each did what the Almighty wanted of them, they are equal. The Rambam tells us something very surprising. Moshe and Aaron, two brothers, they're equal. And it's not an exclusive fraternity. There are other people who can be on that same level. In the Laws of Repentance, chapter 5, law number 2, the Rambam tells us every person can be as righteous as Moshe. So if you are a person and you are listening to my words, the Rambam is telling you, you can also be equal to Moshe and Aaron. By the way, you could also be equal to Jerome, to Yeravam, one of the worst villains of all time. By the barometer of Torah, a person's judged by the degree to which they fulfill their potential. If Moshe did 100% and Aaron did 100%, even though Moshe was much wiser than Aaron, and sometimes, most of the time, Moshe comes first, in the eyes of the Torah, they're equal. And all of us, we can't do 1/10 of 1/1,000,000th of 1% of what Moshe did. But if we do whatever we can do, we are equal, the Rambam tells us, to Moshe and to Aaron. And this is the theme that we talk about a lot here on the Parsha podcast, because it's very critical. In our society, we don't have this individualized yardstick of greatness, of accomplishment. And we're actually not capable of doing this. We cannot measure people's greatness because we don't know what someone's potential is and what it looks like if they do 100%. And that's why we must refrain from judging others. How can you judge unless you actually know what a person's soul looks like, what their abilities look like, what they could become if they deploy 100% of their abilities? Only the Almighty can know that, and therefore only the Almighty can be a judge, a true judge of a person's success and or failure. Moreover, because, we're in a social world, right? We see other people, you have classmates, you got friends, you got colleagues, you have peers. We tend to measure ourselves against our peers. And that can lead to a terrible thing that we call here on the Parsha podcast mediocrity, which is a word that is an insult. It's a 4-letter word for us Jews. We can subsist with just being as good as everyone else. We could be average. But if we realize that you're judged only against your potential, you, all of us, we all have to strive to do our maximum. And we also have to strive to identify what is our unique strengths, what's our unique potential, and we have to work to actualize that. We have 5 sisters here, and one of them was the wisest. But they were all equal. Each was a standout in their own way. Perhaps we can speculate that this is a reason why we're given this part of the narrative of the daughters of Tzelafchad now at the end of the book. How do you wrap up this wonderful book of Bamidbar? In the same way that you started it. The book began with a census. Let's count the Jews. But how do you count Jews? You uplift them. Every person was uplifted. Every person was given prominence. Everyone was given a mission. Everyone was given a responsibility. Everyone was given a role to play. The wise to be wise, the kind to be kind, the hospitable to be hospitable, the empathetic to be empathetic, the servant of God to be the best servant of God, and so on. Everyone has a different soul. Everyone has a completely unique soul. Everyone has a different set of responsibilities and character traits that they must perfect. And each person at the beginning of the book was given an audience with Moshe and Aaron, and were given a window into what their unique soul needs to contribute to this world. Everyone was told what they specifically were tasked with doing. The book begins with the unique individuality and responsibility of every Jew, and this is how it ends. They're all equal. Each one did their own thing. Each one developed their own unique individuality, and when that's done, yes, one's wiser than everyone else, but in the eyes of God, they are equal. There's been a subject that I've been working on the last couple of days. It's a mysterious subject, and I hope to record, please God, a podcast, standalone podcast on this topic. But I think it might be pertinent to our discussion here. So I'll share a little bit of this interesting, this fascinating subject. The Talmud tells us that there were 7 things that were created before the world was created. 7 things that preceded the creation of the world. And they are, number 1, Torah. Number 2, repentance. Number 3, Gan Eden, paradise. Number 4, Gehenom, purgatory. Number 5, Kisei HaKavod, the throne of glory, whatever that means. Number 6, Beis HaMikdash, the holy temple. And number 7, Shmo Shel Mashiach, the name of Messiah. What is the name of Messiah? What does this even mean? Isn't a name simply an identifier of someone? The name, date of birth, social security number? It's not clear at all what the Talmud even means when it says the name of Messiah was a creation that preceded the world. Now, what's remarkable about this is that the Talmud in the book of Sanhedrin on page 98b says, well, what is his name? What is the name of Messiah? So it says in the academy of Rabbi Shiloh, they said his name was Shiloh. And in the academy of Rabbi Yanai, they said his name was Yanon, or Yinon, Yanai. And in the academy, meaning the same name as the head of that academy. And in the academy of Chanina, they said his name was Chanina. And some say his name was His name was Menachem. And some say he is the leper of the house of Rabbi Judah the Prince. This is a remarkable and very strange teaching of the Talmud. Each academy argues, and by the way proves from a verse in Scripture, that the name of Messiah matches the name, would you believe it? What a coincidence. It matches the name of the head of their academy. Now, of course, there's all sorts of questions that we have to ponder. What possessed each of the sages to claim that they're Messiah? Or at least their name is the same name as Messiah? And how could it be that Messiah has so many different names? Is one right and one wrong? Should a Messiah have one name? What does it mean that the Messiah is the leper of the house of Rabbi Judah the Prince? It's a mysterious subject that warrants intense investigation. In more modern times, in the great work called Orach Chaim, written by a rabbi named Chaim, written 250 years ago or so, in Parshas Re'eh, in the book of Devarim, chapter 15, verse 7, he says, I think that the name of Mashiach, it's not Shiloh, it's not Yinon or Yanai, it's not Chanin, it's not Menachem, I think it's Chaim. Oh, not coincidentally, his name is also Chaim. What does this mean? So I heard a novel interpretation. I tried to find the source for it. I couldn't find the source for it. I looked it up and using all my techniques, I couldn't find a source for this idea. But it's a powerful idea. Every single person has a little part of this idea called the name of Messiah. And every sage has to realize that what they need to do is to find and uncover that special point of holiness and purity and greatness that they have within them. Find their calling, unearth it, and actualize it, and do what they can do, contribute what they ought to contribute towards this collective name of Messiah. And when every one of us does our part, if every one of us realizes that we have a mission, we have a responsibility, our soul is completely unique, and it demands a completely bespoke life mission. And that mission ultimately is about Messiah. It's about perfecting the world. It's about revealing the name of God in the world. When every person realizes that this is their mission, and everyone discovers and identifies and develops and actualizes that name of Messiah, that individualized mission that they have within them, when every person undertakes this mission, executes this mission, then the collective Messiah is revealed. Each one of us has an opportunity and has a mandate to bring towards the perfection of the world. Moshe did it in his way. His, so to speak, name of Messiah was his responsibility. Aaron did it in his way. And they're equal. They both did their part. The 5 sisters, the 5 daughters of Tzelafchad, each, like Moshe and Aaron, they were equal. Each accomplished whatever they need to accomplish. Each did their part towards perfecting the world. And they're equal, like Moshe and Aaron. And we too, we can also be like Moshe and Aaron if we do our part. When we all undertake our individualized sacred mission of fulfilling whatever it is that the Almighty sent us here to do, when we channel and develop and actualize what our unique soul needs to do, then we will witness the perfection of the world, and the collective name of Messiah will be revealed to all. And on that day, God will be one, and his name will be one. May we all be fortunate enough to witness it speedily in our days. I appreciate your listenership, for joining us on this wonderful ride, this Parsha podcast journey through the Book of Bamidbar, through the Book of Numbers. My name is Yaakov Wolbe. You can send me an email, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. This is the Parsha podcast, but of course, there are many other shows, and I encourage you to go listen to some of the shows. Send me an email with any questions, comments, or feedback, or anything else you want to say. And I apologize if it takes a while to respond to you. I'm trying to come up with a better system, but we're working on it. But I, please God, will get back to everyone who reached out. Rabbi@wolbajim.com. Have a wonderful day. A splendid rest of your week. And please God, a safe and secure and uplifting and meaningful and powerful and holy Shabbos for you, for your family, for our people, both in the diaspora and in the Holy Land. And please God, with the help of the Almighty, we'll talk to you again next week. And again, the email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.